Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you. It's Mr. Mize. I just want to go over today's lesson building off of the TED Talk by artist slash producer slash DJ Mark Ronson. And so let's get started. The main idea that you really want to come away with today in this build, our lesson builds on this, is when it comes to creativity, nothing is original, and by nothing I literally mean nothing. Artists have to use prior existing material, and not even artists, anyone. You have to use what's come before you, and then you put your own stamp on it. You make it your own. And we see this idea in the TED Talk that you watched, Mark Ronson. Uh, it really is the heart of it. He focuses on one particular song by Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, Lottie Dottie. And this is a song that came out in 1985, as he mentions. And at the time of the TED Talk being shot and filmed that you watched, it was sampled over 500 times. That's a lot. And again, there's something about that music that people wanted to take and to put their own spin on it to a point where it really becomes their own. So we see this concept of really theft within any act of creation. Because again, going back to the premise that when it comes to creating, we have to use something. And so this idea that nothing is original. And so I asked you to watch it. I asked you to kind of identify a thesis statement, looking at this question of how does the idea that nothing is original to some extent fit in with his overall TED Talk. Well, that's it. He gives an example, one clear example of one song and how it's been co-opted by so many artists over the years. And this idea of artists have to use what's pre-existing. There is a level of originality in how they use it, yes, but they're also grabbing something that already is there that wasn't theirs to begin with. And one place you could pause the video right now if you wanted to. We see this, if we were in class together, I'd play this song for you. There's a URL. DJ Earworm, every year, he does a mashup of all the hit songs for that particular year. This one will take you to 2013, but he does this all the way up into the present, where when you listen to the music, it's his song, but it also is not DJ Earworm's song. He takes, I'll show you. In one song, he takes and samples pieces from all of those artists and every one of those songs in one song. And in one sense, it's very much DJ Earworm's song, but in another, it's not his at all. It's 100% his song, and it's 100% not his song. So if you get a chance to go back to that URL, check it out. It's cool. In filmmaking, we see this all the time too. George Lucas, the filmmaker of Star Wars, was heralded as just this original visionary, and he very much is. We wouldn't have Star Wars Land if George Lucas didn't make his film in 1976 whenever it was released. But one of the things I wanted to share with you is George Lucas himself, as a filmmaker, also had to rely upon prior existing material to help create this huge epic space opera that is known as Star Wars. You'll see a URL on your screen, and that's going to take you to actually the making of. I don't know if you guys like watching making of film stuff. I know I do. All the extra features that come with the films that we watch. But it's not even a full 2 minutes. The time signature that I've zeroed out for you on the screen, if you follow that URL, shows you how he himself did this in his own film. And yes, it's an original film, 100%, one of its kind, the biggest blockbuster of its kind, continues to set box office records and generates tons of money and is a relevant part of our culture, the entire Star Wars film series and everything that comes along with it. But it also doesn't come from nothing. It comes from something. There's pre-existing material that George Lucas as a filmmaker initially draws on, and that's how we get Star Wars. And I just saw Onward, and I told myself, Pixar, you better not make me cry. And they had me already close to tears within the first 5 minutes. But they do that. I'm thinking of Up, I'm thinking of Finding Nemo, who thought I would ever shed a tear over a fish dying, but it happened. And my fish actually just died. Jermaine, miss you, buddy. But anyway, in Onward, for those of you that have seen it, one of the main ideas that comes up repeatedly is this idea that on a quest, you have to use what you have. You have to use the material that is in your possession, that's in your sphere. And Barley Lightfoot, voiced by Chris Pratt, reminds his brother Ian Lightfoot, voiced by Tom Holland, of this over and over and over again. And again, you have to use what's there. And with that idea comes this guy, and this was your quote of the week, this idea that Pablo Picasso is quoted saying about artists copy, good artists steal. And this concept that art is theft. You have to steal if you're going to create anything, because again, nothing is original. You're pulling from things that are already in existence, whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're a dancer, whether you are a high school English student trying to do your English work, whether you're a musician. There's stuff that you're pulling from in order to create this new thing, when in one sense something is new, but it also isn't new. So let's explore this idea. Actually, this idea of art and theft is hit me in a big way when I was introduced to this guy. His name is Austin Kleon, the man, not the dog. Austin Kleon wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist, and I have actually 3 copies of it back there, because I'm weird and I buy multiple copies. I end up giving them out because it's such an inspiring book. But he's really just building off of what Picasso, many other artists and musicians and creative people talk about, is this idea again, nothing is original. Austin Kleon mentions, or he shows this photo in one of his TED Talks. He has one. You're welcome to go see it. This is an image, a photograph by Renee Maltete. Excuse me. And Miss G can help me with my pronunciation, or make fun of me for my pronunciation, since she's a native French speaker. But he's a French photographer, and he cleverly captures this idea that nothing is original in a photograph as you look at the shirts of mom and dad, and what then comes of mom and dad's act of creation is the child. And so even in our genetics, we can't, nothing is original really about us, which is sad and funny all at the same time if you think about it. But we can't escape our genetics. That's going to be something that lives with us till the day that we die and we become dust. But again, even us ourselves, as an act of creation, we really are built from our parents. And so this idea is even written in our biology, that nothing is original, even us. But coming back to this idea that Picasso talks about, is that art is theft. And whether you're Picasso, whether you're Mark Ronson, whether you're Austin Kleon, they're all building off of this same idea. And so here's how Austin Kleon breaks down the difference between thievery, or good theft, and bad theft. Good theft honors what they're stealing, what the artist is stealing from. A good thief studies what they're stealing from. They don't just grab it and then put it up there. A good thief steals from many sources. They don't just steal from one. A good thief also gives credit to the original source, and they don't just pretend that it's this and say, this is mine, isn't it great? And there's a transformative element when you're thieving, when you're stealing well. You're taking it and you're putting your own spin on it, as opposed to just copying and pasting and saying, this is mine, when in fact hardly anything, if anything at all, has changed. And going back to this idea of Mark Ronson and DJ Earworm with music, a good thief remixes stuff. They don't just rip it off. It's not like Vanilla Ice ripping off Queen with Ice Ice Baby, which didn't even bother to change it. Dun, 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 dun. Stop. You know that one. Go look it up. He didn't make any money off of that song at all. It's his hit song, and he couldn't make money because he didn't give credit. He basically ripped off something that existed and panned it off as his own. But one of the ideas that we're building off of that, and subtraction is a word that we're all really familiar with right now. We have had how much taken away from our normal day-to-day, and having to work within the parameters that we have. And I mentioned this in your discussion for our word of the week, avant-garde, is this new avant-garde that at least I'm seeing when I look at social media and different parts of the internet, of these forms of creation that are now occurring that would not exist if stuff wasn't taken away, if we didn't enter into this time of quarantine and the great pause that we're in right now. And as we're forced into that space, there's an incredible amount of creativity that is showing up as a result. And yes, as horrible as it is, and as much as I would like to go to Disneyland and see my family and my friends, and just see you guys, to be quite frank, uh, there is something valuable, given the parameters that we're working in. And I've been encouraged by the amount of creativity that's come into that. So, um, creativity, art isn't just about building on top of something, it's also about taking away. And this is going to take us into our next activity, our next assignment that I'm excited to do with you guys. So building off this idea, Austin Kleon, the guy that I already mentioned, The Man, Not the Dog, his first big book that he put out was called Newspaper Blackout, where essentially he was working with pre-existing materials. Here they are. He had a newspaper, he had a Sharpie, and he combined those two things and he created some artwork out of it. So before I continue, there is a 5-minute video and there's the URL. So I actually want you to watch it because it shows you how he does this. And this is when he was first starting out and first being discovered. So it's a few years old. But go ahead and hit the pause button and give a watch to this video where Austin Kleon shows how he takes very little to create something. Welcome back. So building off this idea, you're looking at a newspaper blackout poem that illustrates the premise that Austin Kleon is getting across. Creativity, once again, creativity is subtraction. And this is, it doesn't have to be crazy. A blackout poem doesn't have to be long. It can be something short, like what you see here, or like what you see here. Some of you are like, amen, brother, preach it. I don't like them either. Here's another one. How to be exceptional. The first step is to stop trying. Notice how much and how little of the original work is actually used. And it's fun. I like just looking at how this artist, what they blacked out, the different size letters, and be careful. You don't want to give yourself a headache from all the Sharpie that you might be using. You can also do this digitally. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Too little art and so much time. You guys can relate with the timepiece. But again, notice how much of the original piece is here, creation through subtraction. Machines help you act machine-like. Oh man, we could talk about this one for forever. I'm not sure that the original newspaper article had anything to do with looking at our relationships between us, ourselves, and technology and how we're becoming more machine-like. But notice what the creator of this blackout poem did. They're taking it into a new direction. They warned me, if you stop, you'll drop dead. So I stayed in bed over 1.5 years. Nobody died. Woohoo, for more sleep. Notice the creativity here and how this artist is actually stealing certain particular letters. For example, let me grab my annotation pen. So just here, oops, where are you? Highlighter, there you go. So just this piece there and this piece here, and this is different. We haven't really seen this yet, where they're taking certain letters to make a word because the word that they were looking for isn't necessarily there. So it's just a clever way to do it. Let's look at a couple more. Notice they didn't do a full blackout. They did like this crisscross pattern, which is great too. It serves the same purpose. Home is me and you in any town. Guys, that is a great, great little love poem that was created. It's cute. It reminds me of the Edward Sharpe Magnetic Zeros Home song. Oh, let me go home, I'm with you. You're welcome. Great song. So this gives you a look at how a blackout poem would start with a newspaper. The original article is prisoner raised chickens to supplement jail food. Great. Notice you just, the writer of this went with their Sharpie, and you can actually do this with pencil at first if you don't want to commit fully. And they started picking certain words or phrases that stuck out to them. And so you end up with raised chickens, raised chicken dinner, lunches, meals, homegrown chickens, prime chickens, feeding chickens, sprouting chicks in the coop, nonviolent rehabilitation. It's very nonsensical in a way, and that's okay. It's fun, but it feels intentionally nonsensical. It feels a bit on the Dr. Seuss / Lewis Carroll side of things, which is great. Notice this artist is taking it the next step. He saved the day and then they were married. Now the pirates are after his organs. And notice how they did their blackout, looking like a map with ocean and land. So there's many different ways to do this activity. But that's the whole newspaper blackout idea from Austin Kleon. We're going to take it and actually turn it into a novel blackout. This is where your reading books come in. And no, I don't want you to take Sharpies to your books, especially if they're books that I own for our classroom. But you're going to take a turn at this. And this is where your download on Canvas for this book comes in. You actually don't need to mark up any books. I'm giving you a practice handout using this passage from The Great Gatsby. Great Gatsby is actually the book we would be reading right now. Some of you have your own copy. Great book to read. But this is actually me just taking a page. I just photographed a page and put it on the slide. And you could start playing around with it, and you come up with things like, one autumn night years before, they came to a place where the moonlight stopped and change was among the stars. In one sense, this is very much The Great Gatsby, but in another, this is an original poem. Again, creativity through subtraction, not making anything fresh yourself, using what's already there and then making something new from that. Here's another one. Starting over could be the place where light changes darkness among the stars. It's pretty. Notice what this artist decided to do. They decided to illustrate it using whiteout over the blackout poem because it connects visually with what they were saying. Here's another one. So different creative ways if you don't want to just stick to the Sharpie. There's more examples. I'll put this up. This is from The Outsiders student's novel, Blackout Poem. A kid bit me when he saw that I didn't pay attention and shoved me out the window and into peaceful darkness. One of the tricks with a blackout poem when you're doing this is you don't want your reader of your art, the one who's looking at your art, to know the source. You want to keep it disguised enough that they wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's from The Outsiders, or oh, that's from Harry Potter, or oh, that's from, you know, whatever book that you're reading. You want to put an element of creativity that disguises its original source. And so there's some clever tricks on how to do that. They all look the same. They look like gorgeous hyped up Barbie dolls. They never seem real, but they all think ugly. This reminds me of the film Mean Girls. The original source I actually don't know. But anyway, great examples for us to consider and work from. Here's some tips. Be creative, scribble, draw. Can't find the exact word you need. I already mentioned this earlier. Use the letters from several words to create the word you need. And I want to, one thing that's very helpful when you're doing this is avoid using the names of people because being too specific can immediately pull your reader out of the poem and into kind of a world. Like, for example, if the name Amanda is in the poem, no offense to any Amandas out there, but your reader might have like an association with Amanda that takes them away from your poem that you've created and make them think, oh, Amanda, that's the girl that, I don't know, stole my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and used to make fun of me as a kid, whatever. Yeah, so this is one of the reasons you want to try to avoid names, but we're going to do practice first. We're not going to do this officially until Tuesday of next week where we create our own, because we're eventually going to go here. We're going to take our own reading books. Some of you might be reading some of these books. And we're going to create our own blackout poem from our own reading book. For now, you don't need to worry about that. For now, all you need to do is look at the assignment directions, and we're all going to be using those Great Gatsby. Excuse me. We're all going to be using the same page from The Great Gatsby just to practice. And I want to see your practice before we actually get into next week and create our own blackout poem. So anyway, that's the end of this one, and I hope you guys have fun with this. Play around with it. You can do this digitally. You don't actually have to print anything out. So those of you that don't have a printer, that's okay. You can actually just use your phone and edit that way, or you can. There's other tools on the internet I can make mention of later on, or you guys can message me if you're struggling. Totally fine. But anyway, that's it. Have fun, guys. Create. Bye for now.